My dear congregation, this week's Parsha, Parshas Korach, holds a special place in my heart for two reasons. First of all, it was a Parsha that I read from my bar mitzvah, and many years later, it was also the Parsha which I read from my Ofruf, the Shabbat before I married. Indeed, one of the members of the shul at the time of my Ofruf pointed out that Korach is actually Rashi Tevot. It's an acronym for Kelman Rotzeh Chatuna. Kelman wants to get married. I never forgot that. The rabbi who married myself to my wife, Leora, was none other than Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamm. This year, the year of 2020, Korach has a different meaning for me. It happens to be that this Shabbat is the Shloshim, the 30th day anniversary from the time of the passing of my uncle. And in honor of the avuncular feeling which he shared with me, and now I'm discovering which he shared with many thousands around the world, I would like to share some of his words of Torah on our Parsha in his own words. And I pray that I do justice to those words. Of the critical views of Judaism propounded throughout the ages, two are particularly relevant to our Torah reading this morning. The first criticism accuses Judaism of a dry legalism, too concerned with the picayune and prosaic particulars of everyday life, and not sufficiently attentive to the larger dimensions of spirituality, aesthetics, morality. Thus, Christianity accused us of the love of the law and sought to replace it with the law of love. It concentrated on the church rather than the mundane marketplaces of everyday life, and emphasized grace rather than Torah with its manifold rules and regulations. Unfortunately, even many Jews feel that halakha is not truly religious. In classic Judaism, they averred, there's too much Gemara, not enough God. It proclaimed, therefore, that it would emphasize prophecy over priesthood and tikkun olam over the study of Talmud. In a complete and utter failure to understand the nature of Judaism, they ask, what spiritual value can possibly inhere in such a Mishnah as Shor Shenagach Esapora, or the laws pertaining to an ox which gored another ox? The halacha, in other words, was seen as reducing lofty religious concepts to trivial details. The second criticism was diametrically the opposite. Nowadays especially, one usually hears the protests of practical men, deeply immersed in the complexities and perplexities of daily existence. For them, the demands of halakha are far in excess of what their diminutive capacities permit them. Judaism, they complain, demands a level of integrity that they do not and cannot, they feel, attain in their business life. It sets up a morality that taxes their ability for the constraint of impulses, a self-discipline in food and work and talk, which we would call Shabbat, Kashrut, and Lashon Hara, that overstrains their self-restraint in the name of some abstract principle of sanctity that is far removed from their everyday reality. These two criticisms can be embodied in two types of personality with which we meet in Parshat Korach. On the one hand, there is Korach. On the other hand, there is Datan v'Aviram. Both are united against Moses. Despite the true motivation of their rebellion, they were both malcontents who were power hungry. However, they were not simply riffraff. The Bible refers to them as Kriyei Moed Anshe Shem, people of distinction, and no doubt people who had spiritual viewpoints which deserved consideration. Korach apparently felt that religion should be more elevated than the tiresome and tedious trivialities of the Torah of Moshe. From the response of Moshe, Uvikashtem gam kehuna, which he told them, we may infer that Korach presented demands for greater spirituality. He wanted more personal involvement in the service of God. Furthermore, he proclaimed, Ki chol ha'eda kulam kedoshim, uv'tocham Hashem. The entire people is holy. God resides within them, and therefore the entire nation should be involved religiously as the servants of God. The rabbis in our oral tradition tell us that Korach dressed his entire party in talit shekulot chelet, in garments that were completely of blue color. The Torah of Moses requires only one blue thread in the fringes of the tzitzit. In other words, what Korach was trying to point out was that all men can rise to a much higher station than is required by the boring picayune details of the law of Moses. We are much more clever in figuring these things out. That was the attitude of Korach. Let us look at Datan v'Aviram, who are almost one person. They're always found together. They joined the rebellion of Korach, but they had a completely different motivation and a different point of view. They were practical men, political realists, who preach that the Torah must be relevant to the real needs and concerns of men. And what are the real concerns of men, if not power and ambition and the fulfillment of natural appetites? Why, they protested, talk of religion when we are faced with a wilderness and a desert? Why speak of ethics when what we really need is a land flowing with milk and honey? They did not believe that ordinary people are capable of the demands of Moses and his Torah. Thus, their repeated slogan, Lo na'aleh, we will not go up. Literally, this was their response to the summons of Moses to come and discuss the issue. But in a symbolic sense, more profoundly, there is here reflected their whole attitude. Real men in real life situations cannot go up. They cannot rise as high as Moses demands of them. He is out of touch, far removed, unreal. Just as Korach complained that the Torah is not sufficiently ennobling and edifying, Datan and Aviram protested that the Torah is too taxing. How do we respond to these two criticisms? They are each wrong in that each has grasped only a partial truth. Any view of man which sees him in such a one-sided fashion, either side, is false. You see, Judaism maintains a double standard. It considers at all times both the real and the ideal. Man needs and his aspirations, his material realities, and his spiritual potentialities, his latent loftiness, and his patent pettiness. The rebels, however, were wrong because each of the two camps maintained a narrow view and failed to see the whole of man. Thus, the punishment for this group of rebels was that the earth swallowed them up and the fire from heaven destroyed them. They were each respectively too high in their estimation of man, and yet too low in their evaluation of him. Moshe and Aaron had a far greater understanding. This they reflected in their prayer at the time of the rebellion against them, when they addressed the Almighty as Kel, Elokei Haruchot Lechol Basar, God, who is the God of the spirits of each individual man. He is not only the master of the Ruach, the spirit in the singular, but the Ruchot in the plural. For each man is possessed both by the reality of his situation and possesses at the same time the potentiality to change it, whether for better or worse. Man, you see, is a creature with an almost infinite capacity, both for good and for evil. He is neither solely the giant imagined by Korach, nor the dwarf portrayed by Datan and Aviram. In Hebrew, we differentiate between these two ideals as the matsui and the ratsui. The matsui is the real facts and the desired situation, the is and the ought. Both are parts of Judaism. The Torah and the tradition of our faith neglects neither the facts nor the ideals, neither the matsui nor the ratsui. By considering both standards, Judaism, as it were, looks at man with two eyes, not one. Thus it sees him three-dimensionally, in the fullness of his humanity. The Torah beholds in man not a monolithic creature, but one of fantastic variety of character and accomplishment. One who possesses both elements of the divine and the demonic. One who can be disgustingly ordinary or thrillingly extraordinary. The prosaic plotter and the poetic dreamer. One who can sink into the very bowels of the earth, and one who can rise to the sublimest heights in the purest fire. It sees him as one who misunderstands wisdom as cleverness, and one who can appreciate it as the openness of mind. One who misinterprets strength as the muscles of the bully, and recognizes it as the control of instincts. One who misconstrues wealth as nothing but a tool for social status, yet one who knows that true riches lie in the heart and in the mind. Judaism's double standard, thusly, is a major contribution to the philosophy of man. By combining the standards of the real and the ideal, It never allows realism to become an excuse for human degeneracy, and it prevents idealism from losing touch with the realities of man's limitations. This double approach holds out hope and the challenge of moral improvement for those who feel the weight of their smallness. And it teaches those who have accomplished more in life the virtues of tolerance and understanding for those who have attained less. Judaism comprehends both a halakha, with its keen awareness of man's inadequacy, and agadah, with its soaring appreciation of man's capacity for transcendence. This full and complete, comprehensive view of man is the teaching of Moses, which Korach and Datan v'Aviram both tragically failed to understand. Without it, we are doomed to one-sidedness that will never let us understand either what man is or what he ought to be. Accepting it, we can remain firm in the knowledge of that the Torah of Moses overlook neither man's loneliness nor his greatness, neither his reality nor his goals. In the words which our tradition ascribed to the children of Korach, as their voices issued forth from the bottomless pit of the earth, Moshe emet v'Torato emet. Moshe was right, and his Torah is eternally true. Shabbat Shalom.